If you felt stuck trying to lose weight, you're not alone. Enter Weight Loss by Hers. It's designed to support you in reaching your goals. And Hers now offers access to an affordable range of FDA-approved GLP-1 medications, including the Wegovy pill and the Wegovy pen. With Wegovy at Hers, lose up to 20% or more of your body weight when combined with diet and exercise. It helps you regulate your appetite, eat less, and keep weight off. Plus, Wegovy is the first GLP-1 available in a pill, so there are no needles needed. Everything is 100% online through Hers. You'll connect with a licensed provider who will determine if treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your medication is delivered right to your door. No insurance necessary. And it doesn't stop there. Weight Loss by Hers goes beyond medication by offering access to 24/7 messaging with your care team and tons of in-app lifestyle and nutrition tips like recipes, meal plans, fitness videos, sleep content, and more. Even better, with a range of affordable GLP-1 options, Hers makes it simple to find an approach that fits your needs and your budget if eligible. You'll get a treatment plan personalized to you and unlimited dosage changes as needed. It's weight loss designed to work with your life. Ready to reach your goals? Visit forhers.com/women to get personalized, affordable care that gets you. That's forhers.com/women. forhers.com/women. Weight Loss by Hers is not available in all 50 states. Wegovy is the registered trademark of Novo Nordisk A/S. To get started and learn more, including important safety information, Wegovy clinical study information, and restrictions, visit forhers.com.
The days are longer, the calendar is filling up, and I want to feel as good as this beautiful summer weather. That's why I've been loving Groons. It's one daily pack of gummies that covers my greens, vitamins, minerals, and even has 6 grams of prebiotic fiber, so I don't need to juggle a complicated wellness routine on top of everything else. They taste amazing, they're easy to toss in my bag on the go, plus they're vegan, gluten-free, and HSA and FSA, eligible for reimbursement. Save up to 52% off with code PODCAST at Groons.co. That's code PODCAST at GRUNS.co.
About achievement. They called you when they got you to believe it. Thumb and finger held to their foreheads in an L shape, trapped in a capitalist hellscape. Let's fight back and have some talks about class and the massive cost of the disastrous plots of fascists and Nazis, fat cats and fox. It's 1,000 natural shocks. A Bad with Money podcast.
Hello and welcome to 1,000 Natural Shocks, a Bad with Money podcast. I'm your host, Gabe Dunn. And with me today, we have Tom Hudson. Do you want to tell my audience who you are and what you do?
Sure. First off, thanks for having me. Glad to be here. My name's Tom Hudson. I'm a freelance photojournalist and documentary photographer based out of Richmond, Virginia. And I've spent most of the last year and a half documenting ICE activity and opposition resistance to it in places all over the country.
Where was the first place that you went?
So the very first story that I did specifically about this was in DC when they announced the quote unquote surge of federal agents and National Guard there. Just kind of branched out from there, ended up in Chicago for a while, in Minneapolis during Metro Surge, and most recently in Newark covering the situation at Delaney Hall.
Like a deadhead, but for the worst possible situation.
Indeed. Yeah, I never thought there would be such a thing as a conflict photography groupie, but that's kind of what it feels like sometimes.
I mean, we spoke a little bit before this about the lack of coverage from legacy media. And so it's kind of, to me, been reliant solely on photographers like you, others that I've spoken to bring the actual real on the ground information to us. I don't see any of these photos or any of this coverage anywhere else.
There's been, I think, not necessarily a blackout, but definitely a shortage of legacy media coverage of things that are happening, like we were seeing in Chicago, like we were seeing in Minneapolis, beyond the immediate, for lack of a better term, shock and awe moments. There hasn't been that continued coverage, that continued storytelling about what's going on the ground. As a result of that, you have people like me And there are tons of other photojournalists, video journalists, writers that are out there on the ground doing this work, but they're essentially doing it simply because it needs to be done, not because they're on assignment, not because they've got work that's being commissioned by an outlet. There's just a feeling that there's a need to document these things much more thoroughly than is happening.
It also has drained a lot of the bank accounts of myself and other activists and other journalists to be out there doing this stuff, especially when it became 100% the most important thing to do, which happened to me in June when the National Guard came to Los Angeles. And it is frustrating because I would think in the past, and maybe I don't know enough, but I would think in the past, some of these things would be front page news everywhere.
You would think. And again, like we would see those big shock and awe moments, the murders of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, like those would be headlines for a day or two.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it just fades into the background when there's just so much that's going on that people really need to know about, that people need to know what their government is doing to people.
Yeah, there's a lot of, oh, is that still happening? Oh, it's less, even from politicians in Los Angeles. Oh, when people were being taken, or oh, when, and it's still actively happening. But you're right, after the shock and awe moments, you move on, or you don't even hear anything. Like Memphis was going through a similar big moment. You get some information about Delaney Hall in New Jersey a bit, and then now even that's starting to fade. The average person says, oh, is that still going on?
Oh, 100%. Last month, I was in Memphis working on a story/short documentary with a very talented colleague of mine, Jordan Gualdani, who primarily reports for outlets out of Brazil, but we met during our coverage in Minneapolis. And I know that one of the reasons that brought me out there is I would see kind of hints and little vignettes of things happening there, but I wasn't seeing any legacy media coverage of it, which is what drew me out there to begin with. And then when I got there and I've started talking to people, the things that are happening that people just don't know about, it's appalling.
What were you seeing?
One family that we have interviewed and have worked with, they came here from Honduras seeking asylum, have been here for years. Far as we have been able to tell, reviewing documentation and paperwork and that sort of thing, they've done all of the things that they're supposed to do. As a lot of people say, well, you need to come here the right way. Well, they were doing it the right way, checking in with ICE, going through their asylum process. And this family, all of a sudden, their mother was just detained by ICE.
At a check-in?
No, during a traffic stop. And I'll get to that in a moment. That's one of the more insidious things that we've been seeing. But, this woman and her young child, who was born in this country, is a United States citizen, was deported to Honduras with her. And this is a child that has special medical needs, has had to have several surgeries and ongoing care. And they just put her on a plane and sent her to Honduras. She's not able to get the care that she needs there. And there aren't a lot of avenues to get her back with her mother. When we spoke to people from DHS, they say, well, the child can come back, but the mother can't. So you're asking a mother to just send her child back to the United States in the care of a third party. Like that's not really a choice. So there's a lot of misinformation about, especially when it comes to young children that are U.S. citizens but have immigrant parents. They give the line of, well, the child can stay. What parent in their right mind is going to leave their child in the care of somebody? Because there aren't always family members. There aren't always, very close friends that are available. So you're talking about, I'm going to leave my child in a country, God knows how far away, with somebody that I might not even know that well. Like that's not a choice.
Yeah.
Talking about Memphis and in particular, but Tennessee as a whole, what we've seen in places like Chicago, like Minneapolis, like we used to call it the Bovino show. everything that was done, it wasn't law enforcement, it wasn't law and order, it was spectacle. It was political spectacle, obviously designed to throw that red meat at the super ultra MAGA crowd because that's what they like to see. They like to see people that they don't like getting hurt.
Mm-hmm.
We saw in Memphis, and what's continuing to go on is that spectacle isn't there, but it's much more insidious and I think much more dangerous. In Memphis, they call it the Memphis Safe Task Force, fighting crime. They have, all these federal agents and the Tennessee Highway Patrol and the local police departments, and they're all part of this task force. And we're going after the violent criminals. What they're doing is, they're putting ICE and HSI and ERO agents in police cars with Tennessee state troopers, and they're pulling people over for traffic stops. Oh, you didn't use a turn signal. You didn't stop at that stop sign completely, and then they're just snatching people out of their cars. There's not the same level of public visibility because it just happens like that.
For this woman, so she was pulled over with her kid in the car. They took her out of the car. They just leave the car?
That happens a lot.
Okay.
I don't know specifically in her case, but talking with local organizers and even tow company operators in Memphis, these tow companies have lots full of cars from these stops, and nobody knows what the disposition is going to be because legally they can't release it to somebody who's not, on the title or the registration of the vehicle. The federal government can't claim them.
Mm-hmm.
They can dispose them at auction or whatever after a certain amount of time, but then that comes with its own, moral quandaries. Like these are people that just got taken in the blink of an eye, and is it really moral or ethical for us to just sell their stuff?
What's the process that you've seen? Let's say they snatch someone. In my reading and experience that I've heard testimony and things like that, they just put them in detention. They don't have any of their stuff. They don't have any of their clothes, nothing. Then they either hold them there or they deport them to maybe a country they're from, maybe not. Maybe with someone that they know, but maybe not. You get off a plane, you have nothing and no way of contacting people or anything like that, no money. They just release you. And then what did this woman and her kid do?
They were detained briefly there in Tennessee, and they were put on a plane to Honduras.
What did they do when they got there?
They had to find a place to live. Yeah, they, have family there and are, living in the southwestern part of the country. They're just kind of lost. They had built a life here. Mm-hmm. Her husband is still here, but is in hiding. Mm-hmm. He's worried that he's going to get snatched too. Mm-hmm. Before I started doing this, I worked in emergency medicine and public safety for about 25 years. I was a flight and critical care paramedic. And I've seen a lot of sad shit over the years. But what is happening to a lot of these families is some of the just saddest and most disturbing things that I've ever seen.
Can you go into some of that?
The lack of empathy, the lack of giving a shit about what's happening to these people that are here. They're hardworking. They're not violent criminals. They're not the worst of the worst. They're just here trying to make a life like everybody else. But because of either the way that they came here or simply because this administration doesn't like them being here, all of that's just ripped away with no thought, with no care. And one of the most disturbing things, I think, is watching a non-insignificant proportion of our population in this country cheer it on. Mm-hmm. People that I have known for years, for decades even, and seeing how they have responded to this has just completely, it's changed the way that I look at people. Mm-hmm. Good, reasonable, empathetic people. All of that's just been shattered.
The cheering it on is the hard part. I've spoken to other photojournalists where I was still in a place where I said, oh, people don't know. And, I think a lot of my friends too, I've reached level 10 hater status. But I think a lot of my friends were like, we just have to get people to know. And Nick Stern, another great photojournalist, put it into words for me where he said, they know, they like it. And that has been a really hard part to deal with. Although, like, I have, you know, my family came out of the Holocaust, and I know that people cheered that on. So I think the idea that they just don't know and they need to know doesn't take into account that they like it. But also, I do think sometimes with the work of a photojournalist, you're just capturing things for later. Do you feel that?
I do. So I think that there still is a degree of people need to know,
Yes.
because I think that a lot of people, particularly in the very, not to generalize too much, but in the kind of white middle class centrist bloc, they know what's happening kind of in an abstract sense, but they haven't really seen how this is just very viscerally affecting not only the people who are being detained and being deported, but the activists and the organizers and the mutual aid groups that are trying to support these people. They haven't seen it or experienced it in the same way, so they don't care as much.
Yeah.
So I think that part of our job as journalists, as photojournalists, you know, video journalists, the whole gamut, part of our job is to try to humanize these stories, to try to highlight, you know, the emotion in what's going on. But, you know, I do think you're correct. And, you know, there is a large block of people in this country that just either don't care or think that this is great.
So when you arrived to Delaney, can you walk me through arriving and then where you went and then what you saw and what that was like?
The first day that I was at Delaney was not this past Friday, but the Friday before. I think that was probably the 29th. And when I got there, there hadn't been the quote unquote free speech zones, you know, that they tried to set up. It was, you know, just groups of protesters on the sidewalk, adjoining grass, kind of curb area. Initially, there wasn't much in the way of activity with ICE coming out and doing what they had been doing, and, you know, pepper spraying people and, you know, beating people with batons and all of that we had seen. The crowd was extremely peaceful. There were people holding signs. Of course, there are people heckling ICE agents. You know, that, in my opinion, that should happen. There was a prayer group that was there. People are playing music. What you would expect to see at any peaceful protest. Later that day, the state police showed up. This was the first day after Mikey Sherrill had decided that she was going to, quote unquote, protect protesters from ICE.
Sure.
So they showed up, the New Jersey State Police, really without any notice that we were aware of, and, you know, started placing metal fences and barricades and things, telling people that this was the First Amendment zone.
Wait, the New Jersey State Police said that?
New Jersey State Police said that this was the First Amendment zone. They were just creating corrals for people. And understandably, people were not happy with that. A lot of people had a point. You know, the United States is the First Amendment zone, not fenced in corrals where, you know, people are allowed to stand. And once that happened, people said that they were not going to move, and they sat down, you know, in the street. They had their hands up. They were singing. Nobody was getting rowdy. People weren't throwing things or doing anything that was dangerous towards, you know, law enforcement. That went on for a while, probably at least a couple of hours, and then the sun went down, and the New Jersey State Police responded with police and riot gear, with horses, with flashbangs and concussion grenades and tear gas. And the behavior that I saw that first night was, and I say this having been and reported from places like Broadview outside Chicago, from Minneapolis, where, you know, we saw just all kinds of unconscionable violence from federal authorities. But what I saw from the New Jersey State Police that night, I would say was far worse. The only event that I've experienced that I can think of that would rival that would be in the immediate hours after Alex Pretty was murdered in Minneapolis. But even then, this was somehow worse. because it wasn't just agents shooting pepper balls and throwing tear gas grenades. You had mounted cavalry running horses through a crowd of protesters. You had state troopers with riot shields just beating people, and it was just indiscriminate.
Yeah.
And when I'm reporting on things like that, I wear protective gear from lessons that I've learned in other places, both for protection and for identification. And even while I was backing up as their riot line was advancing, they had a line of those metal fences set up, and I stepped behind those metal fences that they had set up. And as they approached, they grabbed those metal fences and shoved them and pinned me against a telephone pole, and were just crushing me with the fences until I was able to get free. There were multiple injuries that I saw. I don't know how severe. The local activist groups and their street medics, my hats go off to them.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing good work, and they did good work that night. But it was the best term that I came up with to describe what I saw was a police riot. There was no violent provocation from the crowd. If people had been, throwing rocks and bottles and charging the cops and all of that, I wouldn't necessarily agree with their response, but I could understand it.
Mm-hmm.
But what I saw that night was, like I said, I worked in public safety for 25 years. I could not wrap my mind around why they were doing things the way that they were doing.
How do you feel about, because it's interesting to see that it is not ICE or HSI or DHS in that situation, it's New Jersey State Police. What do you make of the reasoning? As far as I can tell in LA, once they realized that we were able to record a little bit of what we were seeing, that's when stuff really escalated and LAPD started getting more involved. I distinctly remember there wasn't a tarp up for the parking garage, and someone recorded women and children in chains being moved into vans. And the response to that was to put up a huge tarp so we could no longer see into the detention center parking garage. Then they sort of started putting up fences and blocking stuff. And then LAPD became, and LA Sheriff's Department, LA Metro, all of them started guarding the building. What do you make of that response? Is it like a collusion, or is it like a guarding of the building? What do you make of why that was New Jersey State Police versus, let's say, HSI coming out of the building?
The official line that Mikey Sherrill, the New Jersey governor, gave was that she was deploying the state police to make sure that protesters were not brutalized by ICE. What I have been hearing is that privately, the administration, there were discussions directly from the White House that if she didn't deploy her state police to quell the protests, that they were going to essentially surge ICE and HSI and ERO and all these folks to New Jersey in a way similar to what they did in Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
I actually just wrote an essay about this, that when you look at that kind of response, the way that Mikey Sherrill and most recently Newark's Mayor Ross Baraka, the way that they lost the plot is that Minnesota gave a model for how to respond to this. Like I said in my essay, I have no illusions about the ability of state and local governments to resist these kinds of federal actions with force without there being open warfare in the streets.
Mm-hmm.
However, and I'm not saying that Tim Walls's response was perfect, because it was not.
Mm-hmm.
But the model that they demonstrated largely works is that you implement the political resistance, through the judicial system and, through the legislative system, while simultaneously denying the federal government access to your state and local resources to further the abuses. In Minnesota, they allowed DHS and all of their alphabet soup of agencies to be the villains that they are.
Mm-hmm.
They let people's anger and rage be focused on the people that it needed to be. They largely maintained a high degree of public trust with local law enforcement and state level law enforcement. what has happened in New Jersey is now not only are people furious with DHS and ICE and all of those, but now they have absolutely no trust in the state and local law enforcement agencies that are supposed to be the ones, quote unquote, serving and protecting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that has done much more damage than if they had just allowed DHS to be the bad guys and, told them, look, this is a problem you've created. You deal with it.
Mm-hmm. In LA, we've spent a long time saying that state and local law enforcement is working with ICE. We've been made to feel insane. And then recently, the police commission, they said, we help ICE, but not with immigration enforcement. And it took a full calendar fucking year for them to admit this thing that they told us wasn't happening. And even recent progressive mayoral candidate, Neitha Raman said, oh, I don't think LAPD is working with ICE, but I think people think that. And it's truly, I feel gaslit in a way that I'm just like living, smelling gas. Like, I don't even know. It's been really wild to see the collaboration. I mean, do you get the sense that they are protecting, like, what are they protecting? They're protecting the building. They're protecting ICE from protests, from protesters, from someone maybe spray painting the building. Like, I don't understand.
And that's the thing. This is not a building that needs to be protected. It's a prison. It has double fences with razor wire, and it's a secure facility. They have their own security staff and DHS agents that are there, quote unquote, protecting the facility. Nobody's tried to set the building on fire. Nobody tried to do anything to the facility itself. The worst things that I've seen protesters do is try to block cars coming in and out of the gates. Even then, I mean, okay.
I know.
They still get through.
Yeah.
The quelling of the protests in, the incredibly violent way that they have does not match the quote unquote threat that is actually there. And this is just speculation on my part, but just knowing what I know about the administration and knowing politicians and knowing cops the way that I do, I could see there being a conversation with state and local leaders in New Jersey that there needs to be a heavy-handed response to this because the administration wants the visuals and know that they want the visuals because they have their own videographers there making highlight reels, for their propaganda campaigns.
They're all recording. We've seen up on the roof of the Metropolitan Detention Center, they have their phones out filming.
Oh, yeah.
They're filming off the roof. They're filming when they come out. They're filming us just as much as we're filming them. A friend of mine and I found some Instagrams that belong to them, and it's so cringe. It's like videos of them doing all this stuff and then some Rambo fucking music behind it. And it's just the lamest thing you've ever seen.
It really is. But it plays to that base.
Sure does.
It plays to the right-wing base that plays too much Call of Duty.
Yeah, exactly. That's the worry is that, you saw the New Jersey police officers, state police. What was the feeling? Did you catch any of them in the eye? What did it feel like to be close to that?
Of course, I can't speak to what other people are thinking and feeling as fact.
Sure. What were you feeling?
My feeling in knowing cops the way that I have over the years, from facial expressions and body language, the way that they were talking to each other, it was like they were having fun. When you see things like I saw some photos recently of patches from one of the local police unions up there. In the center of the patch is a Punisher skull with a Donald Trump toupee on it. It really felt like, to them, it was like a game. It feels like that to them because the state is supposed to have a monopoly on violence. They know that, at least in the current moment, the risk to them is still pretty low. They've got the helmets and the shields and the riot gear and the chemical weapons and the concussion grenades and the firearms. They have all of the tools to visit violence upon people. The people who are there protesting, no, they don't have that. Yeah, you see people with helmets, you see people with respirators. Yeah, that's basic personal protective equipment, especially as all of this started ramping up after Trump's inauguration. Seeing people with their eyes getting shot out by rubber bullets. The photojournalist in LA that had to have a 40 millimeter round surgically removed from his leg. So yeah, of course people are going to wear protective equipment, but it's not like people were there with bats and sticks and throwing Molotov cocktails and shit like that. It's people with empty hands. I think that the police, again, at least at this stage in what's going on, know that their risk is low. And as a result, they can just basically do whatever they want.
That's the importance of the photography and videography in my mind, is people who might later say, oh, I wasn't there, or I didn't do that, or, oh, no, I wasn't involved. I was a ICE officer, but I wasn't there that day. Or I was DHS, but I didn't hit that person. We have now access to so much photos and videos that even if it's not moving people right now, I do again, I'm a level 10 hater, so I don't know. But maybe in my most hopeful vibe is that it will be able to be historically used or something.
That's my hope as well.
Yeah. I can't do everything around here. Deadlines are slipping. I can't just do it all on my own. I need to hire someone. I needed an editor. And I was scrounging. How am I going to find an editor? It was a chaotic mess over here. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. I have personally used Indeed for years. I actually have been hired for 2 jobs off of Indeed. I was able to match my skills with jobs in my area. The only 2 times that I have been hired without any sort of in with the company was through Indeed. So I was pretty stoked to find the people I needed for this podcast, and also to know that I could do that on a place where I have been hired. And if you're looking to hire someone, let's say you're the job looking to hire me, you can use Indeed sponsored jobs as a boost whenever you need to find quality talent. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. That's cuckoo bananas. And so, speaking as someone who has been on both sides of the hiring spectrum, Indeed has helped me in real life spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs.
If you felt stuck trying to lose weight, you're not alone. Enter Weight Loss by Hers. It's designed to support you in reaching your goals. And Hers now offers access to an affordable range of FDA-approved GLP-1 medications, including the Wegovy pill and the Wegovy pen. With Wegovy at Hers, lose up to 20% or more of your body weight when combined with diet and exercise. It helps you regulate your appetite, eat less, and keep weight off. Plus, Wegovy is the first GLP-1 available in a pill, so there are no needles needed. Everything is 100% online through Hers. You'll connect with a licensed provider who will determine if treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your medication is delivered right to your door. No insurance necessary. And it doesn't stop there. Weight Loss by Hers goes beyond medication by offering access to 24/7 messaging with your care team and tons of in-app lifestyle and nutrition tips like recipes, meal plans, fitness videos, sleep content, and more. Even better, with a range of affordable GLP-1 options, Hers makes it simple to find an approach that fits your needs and your budget if eligible. You'll get a treatment plan personalized to you and unlimited dosage changes as needed. It's weight loss designed to work with your life. Ready to reach your goals? Visit forhers.com/women to get personalized, affordable care that gets you. That's FORHERS.com/women. forhers.com/women. Weight loss by Hers is not available in all 50 states. Wegovy is the registered trademark of Novo Nordisk AS. To get started and learn more, including important safety information, Wegovy clinical study information, and restrictions, visit forhers.com.
So last October, when I was in Chicago, I was outside the Broadview facility. There was an incident. It was October 3rd. And Christy Noam had come into town, and some other schmucks from DHS were there, along with Bovino and his CBP goon squad.
Mm-hmm.
The short version of the story is that all morning there had been a very peaceful protest. The protesters were, I measured it on Google Maps, it was about a tenth of a mile away from the actual facility. There was a prayer group there, like an interfaith prayer group, and people are angry, but they weren't doing anything violent. And then Bovino marched his goon squad out the tenth of a mile to where the protesters were and literally just attacked the crowd.
Yep.
I had the opportunity. I was face to face with Bovino at one point. I looked him in the face and I told him that I looked forward to photographing his trial.
That's how I feel.
Well, that's my hope, is that the work that we're doing will aid in holding people accountable for the horrific things that they've done.
It's also hard. I've been grappling with that because we just had the 1-year anniversary in Los Angeles, and it is hard for me to hold that truth and also to watch larger groups and the mayor, who I can't stand, watching them say, wow, let's commemorate. It's been a year. We should hold space for our brothers and sisters in detention. But sort of they almost behave as if it's ended. There's sort of a let's pray and let's remember this thing that happened. And this was last week. And it really bothered me. And I was trying to figure out why. And I think it's because they were acting as if we are commemorating something finished. I feel like it's very empty. And so I get scared of saying, well, we're going to hold them accountable in the future, because then I go, what future? But I also do find historical records and things like that to be really useful. I've watched a lot of the reaction to Kent State, which now, if you were to say, oh, how did you feel about the shooting of students, 4 students who were killed, or 4 people who were there at Kent State, most older people would say, oh, I didn't really know about it, or, oh, I really hated it, and it was so heinous what the government did, National Guard. But you go back and watch interviews with people, and I'm like, this is someone's grandma who is good, they got what they deserved. And so my hope is to have some level of that preserved, but it's also living in a future where that will be possible.
I get it. I have those moments too, especially when, there is some horrific thing that happens at Delaney Hall. And all of a sudden, the attention and the momentum is just broken. People talk about Minneapolis. It's now a historical event that's over.
Right.
Number one was 4 or 5 months ago. And I still have trouble wrapping my mind around that, because it feels like a lifetime ago. But I still talk to people who are there, and it's still happening. It's just not as overt. There's not the same amount of spectacle to it, so it doesn't draw the same amount of media coverage.
Right.
So that is very discouraging. But at the same time, I have to believe that we as a people will get through this and come out on the other side better for it, and will be able to hold people accountable. Because if I don't believe that, then what's the point?
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, no, I completely feel what you're saying. But I have to believe it.
What was the second day at Delaney like?
Oof. So second day at Delaney was also bad, very bad. The majority of the riot police they switched out New Jersey State Police for the Essex County Sheriff's Department. And there were also some Newark cops there. And, there was a sizable contingent of state police, but they weren't the front runners. It was, again, just as bad, if not worse, than the previous night. Again, people were not being violent.
Mm-hmm.
People were being disobedient.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't staying in their designated protest zones at night. Now, during the day, there was a small, like, pro-ICE, pro-Trump contingent that had shown up. The cops put fences up between the two groups, and people yelled at each other and, talked shit,
Mm-hmm.
as you would expect, but it was pretty uneventful.
Mm-hmm.
There weren't any violent clashes or anything like that. And as that wound down and the pro-ICE people left, the people protesting the conditions at Delaney Hall and supporting the strikers, they of course remained. And then the sun went down.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see this as a common theme.
Mm-hmm.
The sun went down and more cops showed up. And as far as I could tell, what sparked the events of that night had to do with the cops tried to push the metal barriers further away. So people were, pushing the barriers, holding the barriers there. So there was kind of a shoving match with these metal fences between protesters and cops. And that's what set it off. And as soon as that happened, they had a busload of riot cops that, it was a bus. I got photos. They had a busload of riot cops dressed and ready to go. And they pulled up and they deployed. And then there were a couple of instances where, and that was New Jersey State Police, they drove their police cars into the crowd.
Yep.
Lights and sirens in. I guess they were trying to break up the crowd or whatever, and then retreated. And then the attack came. And again, I can only describe it as a police riot. There were so many concussion munitions, tear gas canisters, pepper balls. Again, they had horses riding through the crowd. There was one point they were pushing the crowd, and I wasn't right up on the line. I was hanging a little bit back, and their line started to move, so I turned around and started walking in the opposite direction. And I hear the telltale tink 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 of the tear gas grenade at my feet.
Yep.
And that explodes, and then I feel the pop 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 as pepper balls hit my body armor. And I'm just like, are you being serious right now? Like, I'm walking away.
Yep.
Vest that's got a giant placard on it that says press, got my big cameras. It's like it was fun for them. And there were instances, I know specifically of two journalists, one from the New York Times, one from the Associated Press, who were significantly injured. At one point, they were trying to get the police to allow them to carry this injured journalist back to where their vehicle was, which was behind where the riot line was. And they wouldn't let them. They wouldn't let them evacuate this injured person. There was another journalist that I saw with what looked to me like a very obviously angulated fracture of their leg that was having to be, pushed by wheelchair. I don't know where they were eventually going, but if they had to go to the other side, the other end of Doremus Avenue, like it would have been close to 1.5 miles to get where they were going. It was absolute chaos. And the interesting thing that I observed, and of course, I don't know who these people are. They're wearing masks, they're wearing dark clothing. But one very conspicuous difference, and I run the risk of sounding like I'm wearing a tinfoil hat right now.
No, the hat is on. My tinfoil hat probably says number one hater.
So towards the tail end of my time there, I eventually had to leave because I ran out of camera batteries. But at the way behind where the riot line was, at the other end of Doremus Avenue, they had a police roadblock and they had cops there. Nobody was attacking those cops. Nobody was doing anything to them. And interestingly, the cops also weren't stopping people from coming down the street to join the protest, which was bizarre to me. But from that end, a group of people arrived that I hadn't noticed being there earlier. That's not to say that they weren't, but I just hadn't noticed them. Wearing masks, wearing dark clothing. They came with like bottles of lighter fluid and various just junk items and were egging the crowd on. They started setting stuff on fire in the middle of the street, which is not something that had happened the previous night. And I thought it was interesting that the same day that the Proud Boys were there showing their colors, and, other neo-fascist group members were there showing their colors, all of a sudden now people are setting fire to things in the street.
Mm-hmm.
As there's a drone hovering overhead.
To capture the footage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might be a coincidence. It might have been organic. That's certainly a possibility. But to me, it seemed off.
Sometimes it's so hard for me to live in the world of agitators exist and the cops do go undercover and start shit. And also the feeling of being so annoyed by the idea that we have to be peaceful while they attack us. And how there was a day, I think it was No Kings 3, where a bunch of teenagers arrived to the MDC who had not previously been involved and were seeing everything up close. And God bless these kids. They went ham. It was so funny to watch. They were like spray painting, throwing stuff, and at one point, DHS officers started, like militarized in like camo, started coming out one of the side doors, and I watched a kid on a skateboard up and then kick the door closed.
I saw that. I saw a video of that.
Fucking rocked. It is like a thing where I do at times think we need that, but also showing up at the end and setting random fires, I do know is probably a trap. But I also sometimes they say, oh, this was like an escalation to violence, and I'm a little bit like, hell yeah, kid. Fuck yeah.
And that's the thing. So if we look at history in times where there have been actual riots, right? Let's go back to Rodney King.
Mm-hmm.
People wouldn't just set a little pile of trash on fire in the street. Like, people were breaking windows, and buildings ended up on fire, and people were getting assaulted in the street.
Right.
Like, actual violent riot chaos.
Mm-hmm.
What I saw that night was not that. Nobody was damaging property.
Right. It's just like a little fire, not enough to hurt the building.
Yeah, they made a pile of junk in the middle of the street and set it on fire.
Very careful, controlled.
Yes. And that was one of the other things that just kind of seemed weird to me, because I saw this starting to happen. I'm like, oh shit, they're going to start breaking into buildings, and this is going to go really sideways really quickly. But there was none of that. There were protesters there who I had seen throughout the day that were trying to stop them.
Yeah.
We're like, don't do this shit. This isn't what we're here to do. And they were fighting with them. They were threatening them.
Yeah. I don't want to police anyone's way of protesting, but it is very strange. You're right to clock that it is extremely strange to just set a fire in the middle of the street and then sort of like, oh, we did this little thing that's not going to hurt anything, and there's a drone overhead, and
Great visuals.
I'm
the same way. I'm not going to, especially in this moment,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to tell anybody that the way that they protest, the way that they resist is right or wrong. I don't advocate for violence.
Sure, yeah.
I'm not advocating for that at all, but I do understand it.
Mm-hmm.
What I saw was not really trying to police people's way of protest, because it wasn't even part of the protest.
Yeah.
We're talking like this is a ways away.
Yeah.
And the other interesting thing, now that I'm thinking about it, is that when that started, the cops on the riot line way down the street stopped.
How would they know? Yeah. So I have a question. All of this is going on. What are DHS and HSI and those people, what are they doing during this? Are they coming out? Are they involved? Did they start stuff and then New Jersey State Police showed up? Like, what were they doing?
The first night, Friday night, like I said, I think it was the 29th, those assholes. So the police and the riot line came from the north side of Delaney Hall. And so they were pushing people past the actual Delaney Hall building and the gate where ICE had been. And nobody was like rushing the gates of Delaney Hall or anything like that. But all these ICE agents were standing at their open gate, and it became very obvious very quickly what they were doing. They had a couple of guys with like really powerful flashlights, and they would highlight a certain person, and then the gunners with their pepper balls would shoot them.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were just taking pot shots at the crowd that was being pushed away from where they were going. Like they weren't under any threat.
Yeah, it's been a lot of shooting people who are, first of all, shooting indiscriminately into the crowd, which they did to Tucker Collins, who was 18 years old and had his eye shot out. And the video of that is harrowing because he's so far back that they just shot indiscriminately. I've also witnessed someone in the back and they're getting shot in the stomach, not doing anything. Or that Australian reporter, which we moved on so quickly from way in the beginning, who's shot in the back of the leg while she's on camera reporting. So yes, it is indiscriminate, but it is also targeted in a way, like you're saying. So they're shining a light on just a random person.
Well, and they were doing it to press too.
Yeah.
I've got a photograph of a press photographer as she's trying to run across down Doremus Avenue, which, put her across their field of fire.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see them shining the flashlight on her as they're shooting pepper balls at her.
Mm-hmm.
She's not a threat.
Mm-hmm.
Running the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm.
She's got cameras.
Mm-hmm.
She's obviously, a journalist, but they were shooting at her anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't personally experience it, but I did hear stories from colleagues who, especially before the local and state police got involved when it was just ICE, of them intentionally trying to break camera equipment, take camera equipment. We came up with strategies. We had to plan for what if I get detained.
Mm-hmm.
So I started having to set my camera to automatically upload all my photos that I was taking to the cloud, because I knew that if for some reason I got detained, that I was likely to either have my equipment broken, or they were going to take my memory cards, or because that's the MO.
Mm-hmm. So that's what they were doing. They were kind of standing behind a line and just shooting at people.
If you think about a street, like just a straight 4-lane city street.
Yeah.
On one side is the Delaney Hall building. The police were pushing the crowd down the street. ICE is just standing there perpendicular to the street, where they have a clear view of what's going on. Like I said, nobody's approaching them. They're getting pushed and beaten by the cops, and they're just shooting at them.
Mm-hmm.
Not in defense, not because there was any kind of direct threat to them. They just wanted to.
What are some other things before we wrap up? And I do really appreciate this because it feels like a testimony that feels like really, really important to have. And it just feels to me like the most important thing we have is the photos and these testimonies right now. So is there anything else that you wanted to add or to let people know about that happened out there that you think they need to know?
One of the biggest issues is that of media literacy.
Oof.
That falls on both sides. I was the same way. I was conditioned to look at reporting from the legacy media outlets that we've always known, to look at that as the story, right? But the problem with that is, and especially when it comes to this administration. So this administration, I can't even begin to count the number of times that the information that's being put out has absolutely no basis in reality. But traditional media, legacy media, whatever you want to call it, they take that information and they report it as fact. So the people who still rely on those traditional legacy media outlets, both TV and print, they read that story and they have to believe that that's the truth, because that's what we've been conditioned to do. But more often than not, especially when it involves anything to do with this administration and their law enforcement apparatus, increasingly, especially with statements that I saw issued from both the governor and the police departments in New Jersey, it's not based in reality. And I don't just say this because I'm a freelancer and independent, but people need to diversify where they're getting their information. There are so many good journalists out there doing the work, and one of the big problems is that there's so much noise with people who are producing what is essentially propaganda for whatever their cause is. And that's on both sides.
Yeah.
It takes work to differentiate signal from noise.
Yeah.
But it's work that people need to do because otherwise they're not getting the whole story.
No, they're getting state media.
Yeah. And, with the consolidation of media companies that we're seeing, what is it now? Two companies owned by heavily right-wing billionaires now control something approaching half of all TV news.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? I mean, state-controlled media.
Yeah.
Scott Pelley, God, he was always one of my heroes, but this week even more with his recent revelations that Barry Weiss at CBS demanding that in the wake of Renee Good's murder, that protesters be made to look more violent. They need to specifically say that she drove her car towards the agents.
Scott Pelley said that this week.
Yep, it was either yesterday or the day before.
Okay, I got to go look that up.
Yep, emails from Barry Weiss to 60 Minutes producers specifically saying that.
I have a right-wing Finsta, which I use to look at stuff, and the Free Press is crazy.
Oh yeah.
It's the fakest thing I've ever. It's wild. They're just making stuff up. Oh my God. One of the craziest things from the Free Press, this is not related to anything, but it was this article about how some of the kids killed in Gaza actually had pre-existing conditions.
Jesus Christ. I remember that. I was like, what are we doing now? Is this like, died with versus died of COVID? Like, what the fuck?
Girl, I don't know. I was like, wow, wow.
Are we really listing comorbidities as, a cause of death when you got bombed? Like,
yes. Well, no, they were saying, no, this kid didn't actually starve to death because they had an existing condition. Oh, okay. It was specifically about food shortage. Anyway, sorry to jump scare everyone with the Free Press.
But that's the problem. And I'm new at this game. I'm not an old experienced journalist who's been in the trenches forever. Like I'm new at this. This is my second career. I had to do this after I got hit by a car at work.
Oh.
Couldn't do paramedic stuff anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say, as a paramedic, that happened?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, no, don't text and drive, kids. You'll run into an ambulance on the highway. But
that's so many bad things at once.
Oh yeah. No, we got hit on the side of the highway. I blew out a bunch of discs in my back, in my neck. So I can't carry people around and pump people down the stairs and jump out of helicopters and stuff anymore. Like
hitting an ambulance is so bad. Wow, I'm so sorry.
But no, I mean, so my point is like I'm not an old hand. Like I don't even have any formal training in journalism or even any formal training in photography. But as a longtime consumer of the news, what we're seeing, and Barry Weiss is not, the genesis of everything that's wrong with media right now.
Yeah.
But she's a big symptom.
Mm-hmm.
People just need to look at things like that and recognize them for what they are. Barry Weiss was installed at CBS to essentially turn CBS into state media.
Yep.
I know I'm probably, committing career suicide by talking shit about Barry Weiss, but
do it. You know what? Your photos are important, and I think it's important to have people who are not old hats at this. Like, I think, yes, having people who have been in the news for a long time matters, especially, I went to journalism school years ago, and it's no longer relevant what they taught us, really. But there were little bits and pieces that are useful now to me as someone who studied journalism. But I even feel a negative tie to the old ways that I would hope new people coming in or people like you would not feel.
And that's something that I struggle with, because the traditional way of thinking when it comes to journalism is neutrality and telling a story from all sides.
No. Yes, it is, but we're done with that.
But that was going to be my point. I can't stand the idea of neutrality for the sake of neutrality in the face of undeniable, it may be too heavy of a word, but undeniable atrocities that are occurring.
Yes.
The idea that journalists should not bring their their opinions and analysis when they're reporting on stories like this. The thing of it is, that worked in an era where people in power were not necessarily always truthful, but journalism and reporting was being used to hold people accountable.
Right.
There was public accountability.
Yes.
That has disappeared
Yeah.
as far as accountability through journalism for the most part. And when there is so much propaganda and misinformation that is being spread, I think it's important to have the opinions and the analysis of the people who are there, who are talking about their experiences in plain terms.
Mm-hmm.
People say politics this and politics that. A lot of what's happening right now, I don't consider to be politics. Politics is transportation policy,
Sure. Yeah.
monetary policy, things like that. Whether or not human beings should be put in cages because of where they were born, or whether or not people who are protesting the government deserve to be shot, that's not politics. Those are issues of basic human morality. A lot of that is being ignored because of what we've always been taught about what journalism means.
Yeah, it's no longer they go low, we go high, whatever. Now it's just number one hater, tinfoil hat on. I'm joking.
But I mean, you're not wrong though.
Yeah.
Because I can't remember Ed Murrow's complete quote, but in one of his speeches, he talked about talking about television, how it's something that can entertain, but also something that can enlighten and inspire. And it's our job to make sure that that happens. Otherwise, it's just a box of lights and wires.
Had a way with words, that guy.
I know. I think that is using technology, using media to enlighten, to inform. It requires more personal, I don't want to say personal feelings, but the real world analysis of people that are there. Of course, people's opinions and biases are going to play into that, but objectivity is not the same as neutrality. Like, you can be objective and still provide a personal analysis of what's going on.
I love that. Well, where can people find you and your work?
I work with a couple of wire agencies. I do get bylines in publication. Like Mother Jones has used a bunch of my stuff, the Wall Street Journal, NPR, that kind of thing. But as far as my own reportage and archives, I'm on Instagram and Threads. I'm on Threads a lot at hudson.images. I do have a website, tomhudson.us.
Wow, you got Tom Hudson. That's exciting.
I did. And of course, all the photo editors and media folks out there, I am available for assignment. You can find my contact information on the website.
I was going to say, hire this man.
Got to use this opportunity for that.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you.
Thank you for listening to 1,000 Natural Shocks, a Bad with Money podcast. This is a noted bisexual production, edited by Allie Mims. Logo art by Dakota Becker. If you like the show, please consider subscribing to the Substack, 1000naturalshocks.substack.com. The Substack has episodes of this show ad-free and also videos and also my original writing. It would mean so much to me if you would subscribe, even as a free subscriber. But a paid subscriber really allows me to keep doing this work, and I can't do it without you guys. Thank you so much. Okay, love you. Bye.